What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Tristan. Most of you know me as Hayes. I am the host of the Ambition Podcast. And what you guys are going to be watching or listening to is episode 10 of the podcast. My guest that I have on this episode is going to be the legendary Paul Trust, who is a songwriter, producer, and mixer in the music industry. He has worked with record labels such as Sony Music, Epic Records, Columbia, and Fearless Records, as well has worked with artists such as MNQN, Downplay, and most notably Starset on all three of their albums. We talk about the music industry as a whole, how to get into it, as well as some other things that I know a lot of you guys are definitely going to be interested in listening to. That being said, let's get to the podcast. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Tristan. I am the host of the Ambition Podcast. And today on our episode, I have a really special guest for you guys. Someone who I look up to in the music industry. Someone who definitely is someone I would say a leader in the music industry. That being the legendary and iconic Paul Trust. Paul, for those that don't know who you are or your background, kind of introduce yourself.
Legendary and iconic. I mean, I'll take it. But so I'm a producer and a songwriter. I've been doing this for a while. I started out as a musician, went to University of Miami for music, and got into production and songwriting. And, I've worked with, artists that you're familiar with, like Starset, Mannequin, in the country world, an artist named Morgan Wallen. And a lot of what I do is working with artists at the early stages and do a lot of artist development and, help get those artists to the next level.
All right.
That's a quick rundown.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of talk about how you got into the industry, because I think every person definitely has their kind of their own way that they get into to a certain role or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to tell you my path. It's a path that doesn't exist anymore because the music industry is a different business than when I started. But when I graduated from college, one of my best friends, we went to school at the same time as a producer named Joe Barisi. Joe is very well known. He just did the last Tool record. He does Chevelle. There's a lot of, he did great. And the path that Joe and guys like me would take was we would graduate and go intern in a big studio and work your way up. Eventually you go from intern and cleaning the place to assistant engineer to staff engineer, and you go that route. And that path doesn't really exist as much anymore. For me, the path when, assistant engineer, intern, assistant engineer to Miami studio, use the studio time, off hours, since I was always a songwriter, to record my own band, my own songs. That song, one of the songs from that band, ended up getting on radio. It blew up, and I got a record deal. And from that point on, I was producing and writing for other bands. So that was sort of my path. Okay,
cool. So obviously, you've been in the industry for quite some time. To kind of as well for people who don't necessarily know some of the things about Paul, he's had 8 major label deals. Ranging from Fearless Records to Sony. I believe at least 1 billion plays on YouTube, probably between all the songs that you've done, and obviously there's probably a lot more when it comes down to it. But kind of talk about what that is kind of like, seeing obviously like from where you started to this like major success, I would say.
Yeah, it's funny. First of all, it doesn't feel like major success, to be honest, because every time you get to the top of one hill, you realize that there's much bigger hills behind it to climb. So all it was for me is just working my way up, and then eventually, after hundreds of artists that I've worked with, a few of them ended up becoming really big.
Yes.
For instance, Starset and Morgan Wallen in the country world. I had worked with Dustin since he was in Downplay. This is going back to 2009.
Yeah.
So, eventually, and it took me a long time. And sometimes get out of college or get lucky, and 2 or 3 projects in, they get lucky, they hit a home run and get on something big. Not for me. I had a very long path before anything that I was associated with had success. And you just have to keep going. And it's just a step in the process, but there's always a bigger goal. I want platinum records on the wall, and I want a Grammy. So there's much bigger goals still to try to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's always a higher bar to be raised. And one of the things that when I first went to do a little bit like more research on you, because I knew at least that you worked with Dustin on Starset and Mannequin, and we can kind of talk about those in a quick second. But I didn't realize as well, like you've had songs on major news networks, like Thursday Night Football, NFL on CBS, and and a ton of crazy things. And then you've also done the Vans Warped Tour, and just a slew of other things. And that has to be kind of intriguing, every time you get say an opportunity like that. What is that kind of like?
Well, that goes with having done it for a long time. And if you always work hard to put out great work, that's the first thing. Put out great work. You're honest in your business dealings. You build up a good reputation. Opportunities in all different avenues of the music business will find you. And every time an opportunity comes by, you have to take advantage of that, because today's music business is very different. You have to be able to make money from lots of different avenues.
Yes.
Especially if you're a songwriter. And I was presented the opportunity probably 15 years ago to try writing some songs for CBS Sports. And, I jumped in full throttle. I saw it as a great opportunity. Yeah. Because that's the kind of thing I can sit by myself. I play every instrument. I can do it, and it pays really well. And so I got lucky. I took the time. I worked hard at it, and now 15 years later, maybe more actually. I have a pretty big library being played on all the biggest sporting events. I'm waiting on my the person I work with is getting me a clip of the AFC Championship game that just played last week. I guess I had a big play in that one I didn't even know about, so he's getting me a clip of that. Yeah. So, there's things that you just have to work. You work, and those opportunities will come your way. And as long as you just work really hard, and it's very important, you just have to be honest and a good person to work with, and people will come back to you.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's how those things happen. And frankly, the reason you see so many of all those weird random things is because I've been doing it a really long time.
Yeah.
That's why you see.
I
mean, there's things that aren't even on the website. I don't have time for all that.
Yeah.
There's bands first band that I signed to my own label, we got a deal with a label that was through BMG. Their management company was actually Duran Duran's management company.
Oh, wow.
So at the time, they asked me, the band named Al's Not Well, you should look them up, to go on tour for the entire North American tour for Duran Duran.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
The band didn't have a manager, didn't have anybody. I was sort of their
the
mentor,
de facto like big brother.
Yeah, so they asked me to go as the tour manager for Duran Duran. And, so, one of those crazy random things that, opportunities present itself. And so, yeah, I've been on tour with Duran Duran. So
yeah, definitely. So, kind of, obviously, I would say our shared connection is Starset and the lore behind it. For those that don't necessarily maybe understand the lore of Starset, kind of talk about that, because obviously, for the band, and then obviously like each album, because I know at least Transmissions and the most recent album, Divisions, have really heavy storylines to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is an ongoing plot.
Yes.
To everything in the Starset universe, and it all ties in. And sometimes I think you'd be amazed at how, as things unfold, you'll find things connect. I'll just leave it at that.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I guess the best way that I've always described Starset, is I've kept to the same culture that obviously the band has with with how they would do interviews where they talk about the narrative, the whole message, as described in the books and the precursor to the albums and everything, and just explain that it's kind of an escape from reality, but also it's unique that there's not a lot of concept album bands out there that can kind of garnish like the attention that Starset does. Like Starset's one of the main ones.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. If I wasn't, doing my part with Starset, I'd be a Starset fan because it's cool. It's cool stuff, and it's kind of stuff that when I was a kid, I would have listened to.
Oh yeah.
It's just cool, So yeah, I would, if I wasn't, involved with it at my level, I would be a fan. I would listen to it anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it. It's cool. It's unique. There's nothing else like it right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know you did some songs on the album, but like, are there any songs maybe that weren't your own that you really, really like? If you took time to listen to the album of Divisions, like, is there any that you really liked, and like, why were those? And I asked that for maybe fans of maybe a song like Telekinetic or Where the Sky's In, to kind of broaden their horizons.
Yeah, let me see. Let me go first on Divisions.
Yeah.
Just objectively stepping back from that record, on that one, I honestly like one of my songs. I think it's probably my favorite song. So Where the Sky's End to me is just quintessential Starset. I love that song. If I wasn't a part of that song, if I didn't write it with Dustin, I would still think it's an awesome song.
Oh yeah.
Going back to like Vessels, the song that I didn't write that I just love. I love Ricochet.
Oh yeah.
I wish I had written that song. That's a great song. Going back to the first record.
Yeah.
The song that I loved that I didn't write it was Telescope. I thought that was an incredible song. Again, I wish I had written that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes I actually can sit back though, and by the time Dustin does his thing with the songs that we write together, I sit back and I can listen to them as a listener and go, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you definitely hit the nail on like some of my favorite songs, like Ricochet. When I saw it last year on the Immersion tour, I really loved it. I know they played it this year at least at the demonstration I went to. I know they had some song changes depending on like the venue and times and obviously the mix between New West and Rebels. Because like I joked with someone when I go back and look at the set list, like they did Colorado in Denver like a couple days before they came here to Lincoln, and they did like Telescope and It Has Begun, and I'm like, they didn't do these songs here. I'm like, that would have just been beautiful. Like I go and I watch those on YouTube because I'm like, I would have loved to see how that was. But I mean, like even to each their own. The songs are definitely awesome. Yeah. Telescope, I think is extremely underrated because they don't play that song as much at venues, and hopefully this time around, when they do the 2020 tour, they do it. Because let's be honest, I would love to hear it. And the other one that I've like slowly started to love more and more is Everglow, because of the second half of that where they make the whole bridge transition, and just like the mix of like Dustin and Adam when the drums are going, and it's just it's purely like harmony, I would say. So obviously what is it kind of like working on these albums, because obviously without going into the whole industry secrets of that type of thing, what's it like? Because I imagine especially with having to play into that storyline and interludes and everything, like there's got to be sort of like a method to the madness, and keeping everything together.
Yeah, well, Dustin was the producer now on Divisions, which is the first one that he produced.
Okay.
And so he handled all of the ensemble and all the different guys doing all the different jobs on the record, and he was the guy, in charge.
Okay.
Of it all, making all the calls. So, and that, I think he did a great job.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a great sounding record. But they're all different people doing all different roles. For Dustin, I wear a few different hats. Like on this record, I write songs with him, which we've always done, and then I helped put together the album and do all. I'm sort of a budding film composer. I recently did a movie, and I did all of the segues, helped him with all of the segues between the songs and all the production. He actually hired a Hollywood sound designer to do all of the actual sound design when you hear breathing and you hear beeps and all those location sounds. That was done by a Hollywood sound designer. That's why it sounds so great. And then I did the scoring, all of the music and under padding behind that, and helped mix all of those transitions, as well as we wrote the intro. Dustin had the I guess one interesting behind the scenes fact I can tell you, Dustin wrote the intro, and just did a quick pass of it in his studio and sent it down to me, the intro speech. So just to get me started, so I could start writing some music for an intro. And as I got it in there, I thought he sounded, because he was going to hire a voiceover person to come in and to redo it. And I heard him doing it, and I said, "Man, you sound totally awesome. You cannot change this."
Yeah.
We just we edited out a few words in here and there, but that original take he did is the final version. That's it. He never even redid it. That was it.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah, and I thought it turned out really cool.
Oh,
absolutely.
I
think personally, out of all of the 3 records, that's my favorite intro.
Yeah.
That just has the most. I mean, to me, it's like sounds like a scene from Ready Player One or something like that.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I totally dig that. That intro.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like there's still parts of me that are trying to decipher the intro to Vessels, that being the order, because like I know there's all the like voices behind it, and I'm just like, it's so fascinating to kind of piece together, and I mean, there's conversations between fans about, like, who is the person in the the audio segments after each song,
Yeah.
and, I'm not gonna ask you to, like, confirm or deny it. My whole theory is it's solely based off of the whole theory that's going on with the divisions, demonstrations, at least on the Rebel side, where it seems like Ashton is the this whole architect of the BMIs, if I understand correctly. And so my whole thought process, and I think I posted this on social media a couple days ago in a group chat, was that Ashton is probably the one in all the audio segments going through, realizing everything around him, and realizing that he might have doomed all of us, in some way, shape, or form. And maybe when the second book that I know is supposed to come out sometime this year, maybe my theory might be correct. Maybe I might be proven wrong. So I mean, there's a lot of theories I've seen people come up with, from all across the world about, what the whole how each audio segment plays in, and the ties to both the prox transmissions and then so forth. So that's definitely something I think a lot of people are going to kind of be interested in. Now, one of the things that I talked to you before I got on the podcast with you is that I am a kind of at times a YouTube content creator, and there's a lot of I would say maybe disdain from the music industry, when it comes to us content creators wanting to be able to use music. And obviously, you don't deal in licensing and all those things, but kind of give your perspective on, is that a good side of things? Is there maybe a way that labels could work better with content creators and maybe the montage makers out there that really want to get the band's any band's song out there, really?
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody minds people using the song.
Yes.
Put it out there. At some point, I think the issue is, do people need to pay to do that? And of course, I come from the view that's my livelihood.
Yeah.
It's like with all the time and energy and hard work that goes into writing these songs and creating these songs. I think everyone should be really happy if the songs get used in different places, but at some point you have to weigh out the exposure versus getting paid for it as well. Because right now we have a pay scale in the music business that's just a little bit out of whack, considering the amount of money and time that goes into creation and what actual places like Spotify and even worse YouTube pay for every time you watch it. While they're don't get me started, but they're raking in millions and millions of dollars, and it's just not making its way back to the content creators.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to ask that. Is just because, like, I see always people complaining about copyright and content ID systems, and obviously there's probably never going to be a proper solution to it, but just kind of getting that perspective, maybe at least for some of the gaming creators that at least watch me or may stumble upon this podcast, maybe that opens their mind to understanding that it's not just us or these labels that are out to get us. Sometimes obviously they're in the best interest of the artist, which at the end of the day I think all of us can kind of can get behind, obviously, as music lovers and you know, maybe diehard fans of certain bands. One of the things that I do want to touch on, and this was something that happened last year, and I don't know if maybe you read up on it or, you know, industry, but it was kind of a big deal when the New York Times posted an article about the Universal Studios fire, you know, that all the master recordings got burned. You know, for those that first off don't know what master recordings, you know, are and the significance that they play, you know, kind of touch on that, and then, you know, overall, if you kind of did hear about that, you know, like, what are your thoughts about it?
As far as losing the masters,
yeah,
on those songs.
Yes.
Well, you know, most stuff has been, I think, at this point, transferred to digital.
Yes.
So it's always sad to lose originals, but at this point, most multi-tracks and most things have been, I would think, you know, have been transferred over to digital. So I'm not sure if it's actually. I'd have to read up on that story.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, cause I know that they talked about most of I would have to recheck on it, but I know large amounts of catalogs really went up in that. I know that they talked about most of the original chess masters, you know, Chuck Berry, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, as well as John Coltrane's, all were lost, which you know, like, you know, I never listened to that, you know, obviously, given that was before I was born, but, you know, like, you know, I shared that news one day to family who was around that time, and they were shell-shocked hearing about that. So, you know, I mean, definitely, you know, it's definitely worth leaving or taking the time to read about it. And for anyone who's watching this who wants to read about it, I'll try to find that original article, leave it in the descriptions of, you know, the audio and visual of this for everyone who wants to look at that. So kind of going forward, you know, obviously, you know, you worked with Dustin on Mannequin, you know, and I don't know if Mannequin is kind of part of that same Starset universe. Maybe there definitely seems like there's some correlation or some ties to the universe, but you know, kind of talk about that project, because it was kind of interesting to kind of see, you know, rather than, you know, a whole band being a narrative, that you know, there's so many different ways that you guys did at it. You know, I remember even one time, you know, Dustin did something like a joke cease and desist leading up to, I believe it was Man on the Moon or something like that.
Well, you know, Mannequin, if you really think about it, you know, Starset exists, and even Downplay exists, and Mannequin now exists without really infringing on either of those. It's really something different. You know, it's a different place to explore than Starset. There's obviously similarities because you have some of the same people involved, you know, so you're going to hear their creative input. But I think, I know Dustin's goal was, this is not meant to be Starset. You know? It's not meant to step on the Starset universe. Although if there are plotline ties, that's possible. I'm not going to comment on that.
Oh yeah, of course.
But I think people can draw their own conclusions of where the, you know, if and where there might be any connections. But I think that was one of the goals with Mannequin, is that it's not trying to use anything from Starset stylistically. It's its own thing.
Yeah, it's more like electronic pop than, the popish rock to sometimes heavy vibes that you would get from a Starset album.
Right. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a whole different experience. It was a different approach than Starset. So yeah, we had a lot of fun doing that one.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it definitely seems like things are always going well for Starset. I mean, seeing the marketing that went into this new album, was crazy. Watching all the videos that came out before the album release. The one I actually talked about this with someone who asked me about Starset earlier today. Was, I said, like, prior to or I think it might have been right after the launch of the album, they shot a plexiglass with the Starset logo into space, which is literally quite genius and also creative at the same time. But it just also seems like there's so much room with concept albums that could be done. There's so many bands out there that are doing that. Iceland Kills is definitely one that comes to mind in the horror genre. I'm pretty sure that there's others out there that haven't been discovered. I know there's just a ton of cool things, and even things that don't have to do with Starset and maybe concept that are kind of being compared. There's a game that came out a while back, in the video game world called Detroit Become Human, and there's the whole thing of this I want to say like alternate world and not bionic humans, but more or less that same kind of culture as a brain machine interface or things of that nature. So it's definitely interesting. So for those that want to maybe get into the music industry, what would you say now is obviously the best way to do that? If you're a casual fan, I know some labels do internships and some have street teams. Like what would you recommend, or even say like the best path to go down for those who really want to get into doing the music industry?
Yeah, I mean that's a really tough question because there's no clear-cut answer.
Yeah.
The only general answer I can give you is everybody has. If you're on the creative side in the music business, look at what you do better than everybody else, and utilize that to separate yourself out from the pack. Probably these days, to get started, find your niche and drill down to that, and just own that niche and work your way up that way. Because there's no one path anymore. That's one thing with content is everywhere. Content it's universal. Everyone has access to releasing music worldwide now. But with that also comes it's easy to get lost in an ocean of music. So how do you separate yourself? You got to be great. You got to make great stuff. You got to have your own voice and be different. As far as being behind the scenes in the business, I've always been of the view you got to put your money where your mouth is, and if you're behind the scenes, you want to be an engineer or producer, the best way to jumpstart your career is to get yourself attached to a band that goes on and does a little something.
Yeah.
That's the way something will happen for you. So you need to get the band, get working and writing with bands or artists that you believe in.
Yeah.
And get that stuff out there. Hope that helps.
Yeah, I mean that definitely hits the nail on the coffin. And I even mentioned a little bit before I pressed record on the podcast that I Yeah, I've been a fan of some bands under, like Fearless Records, and now like I'm happy to be part of a street team. Even though I don't live out in like L.A. or New York where all the fun stuff occasionally will take place. It's always kind of interesting to kind of be part of something like that. And eventually who knows what could happen. The possibilities as time goes on, and especially it's a new decade. There's new ways to do things. You just never really know. And I mean, even going as far as going as little as working with local radio stations and just doing photography and videos. Sometimes I would say is a even easier way to just get into doing something that maybe you like or whatever. So I definitely appreciate your answer on that. I know I've kind of asked a ton of questions and everything, but are there kind of maybe questions that you may have for me as a shared music lover, or things maybe that I've never really thought about with the music industry?
Well, I guess the thing that you have to think about in the music industry these days is music is everywhere. Music gets used throughout your life. And if you want to really be part of the music business, I think you need to embrace the fact that music is more than just having a hit song that is on the Billboard charts. It's about having a song that's on a TV show, or having a song that's on a commercial, or having a song that's being used in a video game. That is the real music. If you want to be in the music business, you have to embrace the fact that you are in music is everywhere, and you want to be a part of that. And that's very important to people that are coming up and want to survive. Don't you have to spread out where you're bringing your money in, because at the end of the day, it just does not pay as well. Just the base income on record sales alone. So I guess that's an underlying concept that I would leave you with.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, what I like to do with, any guest that comes on the podcast, if there's, any projects upcoming maybe that you could talk about, or, things that you're excited to see in the industry, obviously feel free to kind of talk about those. Again, I understand if there's certain, leaps and bounds that you're held by, but then also if there's any way that people can kind of connect and see what you're doing, even when those things come out, the floor is yours.
Well, most people, anybody that follows me knows that I don't spill the beans on things ahead of time.
Okay.
I managed to make it all the way through 3 Starset records, and Amanda without ever spilling the beans on what was going on while we were working on it. And so, yes, there's always new projects I'm working on. There's several new signings I'm looking at, and actually also in different genres. But I'm just not going to spill the beans on those until they're done and out there. That's just the way I roll.
I respect that, definitely.
There's new stuff in the works all the time. So, and several new ones that I'm excited about. So.
Okay. And then, again, for anybody who really wants to, kind of connect with you, social media wise, kind of tell the podcast,
Easy to find on Facebook. You go to Paul Trust Productions on Facebook, or, if you want to hear a bunch of cool stuff, some unreleased music that you're not going to hear anywhere else, with some of the artists that I've worked with, you can go to paultrustmusic.com and just go to the listen page, and there's some cool stuff on there that nobody else in the world has it. So It's the only place in the world to check that out.
Okay, that's definitely awesome. And I'll make sure that that's in the description boxes of everything. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your your busy day to to come chat with me about the music industry, Starset, and hopefully maybe one of these days we run into each other at a concert or a festival or heck, a demonstration or something of that sort, because I think that would be definitely a surreal moment. But again, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk on the podcast.
Yeah, no problem. I'm definitely overdue for checking out a Starset show.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's just it's fun going to every single concert and wondering what's gonna happen. I mean, like, I always will regret not going to the Kentucky show they did right before the end of the year, because I know, like, midway through that, something like they had a set issue, and Adam and whoever else was on stage got to do their own little solos, and I was like, that's awesome. That's something you never get to really see. But it's something definitely really cool. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time and everything.
No problem.
All right.
Happy to do it.
And for everyone who is again listening or watching the podcast, bear with me. I got a lot of guests lined up, a lot of other things that I'm doing at during my span of a day. So just hang tight, guys. When the podcast comes out, it's definitely worth the wait. And I will see all of you guys in our next episode.